Which one should you buy? The iPhone 15 Pro or iPhone 15 Pro Max? And what are all the differences? Welcome everybody to Apple Insider. It is Andrew here, and Apple has released its iPhone 15 lineup. This year, there are more differences between the Pro and the Pro Max variants of the new phones. So that's what I'm going to break down in this video. Use the chapter markers down below to skip to the sections that you care most about. And yes, we will get to those new cameras at the end, which is absolutely the biggest difference between the 15 Pro and 15 Pro Max. To start, both of these phones are similar in many ways. They're both the Pro version of the iPhone 15. They all have the new titanium body that comes in 4 really cool colors. They both have the new action button there on the side that you can program to do nearly anything that you want. They both have the new USB Type-C port with up to 10 gigabits per second of data transfer. And of course, they both have the new A17 Pro processor on the inside with the incredible new GPU. But beyond that, there are some differences that we need to look at in this video. And when it comes down to it, there are 5 differences between the iPhone 15 Pro and iPhone 15 Pro Max. Starting off with the size. The iPhone 15 Pro has a 6.1-inch display, and the iPhone 15 Pro Max has a 6.7-inch display. There's the same delta that we saw with the iPhone 14 and even the iPhone 13 line, so 6.1 and 6.7 inches. Weight is also a difference here. Of course, bigger phone, it's going to weigh a little bit more. The iPhone 15 Pro weighs in at 6.6 ounces versus the iPhone 15 Pro that weighs 7.81 ounces. Is that weight difference noticeable in using the phones? It is, but not that much. I mean, compared to years past when it was stainless steel, it was definitely a heftier device. This year doesn't seem like that big of a deal. So weight, that extra, a little over 1 ounce between these two guys, it's not going to be a differentiator, I think, like it was in the past. Because of the bigger phone, Apple also is able to give us more battery life. Apple offers 23 hours of video playback time on the iPhone 15 Pro, and the iPhone 15 Pro Max is able to extend that all the way up to 29 hours, more than a day of video playback on the iPhone 15 Pro Max. With that said, these are the same battery estimates that we saw with the iPhone 14 line. So the 14 Pro and 14 Pro Max have reportedly the same battery life as the 15 Pro and 15 Pro Max. At the same time, we have heard reports that the new cells, the battery cells in these phones are actually higher capacity than they were before. So we'll have to see if that actually means slightly longer battery life in actual use. And once we get to our reviews, I'll be able to tell you that. What matters for this video is that bigger phone means more battery life compared to the 15 Pro. Another internal change is storage capacities. The iPhone 15 Pro is available in 128, 256, 512, and 1 terabyte versions. But the iPhone 15 Pro Max is only available in 256, 512, and 1 terabyte. So what happened to that 128 gig option that we had with the 14 Pro Max? Apple nixed it this year. And that's because of our next change between these two devices, which is price. So the price on the iPhone 15 Pro Max has gone up, but it hasn't. The starting price for the iPhone 15 Pro Max is $100 more than it was last year for the iPhone 14 Pro Max. But at the same time, it's gotten rid of that lower 128 gig capacity option. So the 256 version of an iPhone 14 Pro Max is the same price as a 256 version of the 15 Pro Max. So technically Apple has raised the price here, but it's kept those storage options the same. They've just gotten rid of the 128 gig option. So that's another difference between these two phones, is the iPhone 15 Pro Max is $200 more than the iPhone 15 Pro, but you're getting more storage. The iPhone 15 Pro starts at $999, so $1,000 for a 128, whereas the iPhone 15 Pro Max starts at $1,200, but you're getting 256. So $200 delta between the two, but looking at 128 and 256 gig as starting storage. That, of course, brings us to the biggest difference between these two phones: the cameras. Both iPhone 15 Pro and iPhone 15 Pro Max have 3 cameras on the back. There's a 12 megapixel ultra wide angle lens, which will give you 2 times zoom out, optical zoom out. They each have a 48 megapixel primary wide angle lens. Again, same sensor there for that main 1 times zoom, your just main sensor, same across the board here. But what's different is the telephoto lenses. So we're looking at a telephoto lens compared to a telephoto lens, but with some substantial differences between the two. The iPhone 15 Pro has a 12 megapixel telephoto camera with an f2.8 aperture. The iPhone 15 Pro Max also is a 12 megapixel telephoto camera with an f2.8 aperture, but it has a larger sensor. So it's a larger sensor compared to the regular 15 Pro. The iPhone 15 Pro also offers second generation sensor shift optical image stabilization, where the new iPhone 15 Pro Max has a folded tetraprism design and an autofocus 3D sensor shift module. Why do we need this improved stabilization on the telephoto lens on the iPhone 15 Pro Max? When you are zooming in a lot, that is going to mean a small movement here in front of you is going to make a big difference there. I mean, think about your arm. I move this hand a tiny bit, but that's a big difference way out here. So it's the same thing when you're zooming in on your phone. When you zoom in more, you need better stabilization. Otherwise, it's going to be really hard to keep your hand still enough to capture a clear photo. Which brings us to the biggest difference between these telephoto cameras. The iPhone 15 Pro has 3 times optical zoom with up to 15 times digital zoom. The iPhone 15 Pro Max is 5 times optical zoom and 25 times digital zoom. But what matters is the photos themselves. And honestly, there's a whole trick here where the 15 Pro in some situations looks better than the 15 Pro Max. So let's look at some photos. So I headed to this little small town and snapped some photos as I was walking down the roads. And this first one here, I saw this mural on the side of the building that looked great, and I pulled up both phones and I shot the first photo at 3 times zoom. So what's going on here is the iPhone 15 Pro is using its 3 times optical zoom telephoto lens. But on the iPhone 15 Pro Max, there is no 3 times optical zoom. You just have a cropped version of the main sensor. So it's actually digital zoom to give you that 3 times effect. You don't get to use optical until you move to the 5 times optical lens. So 3 and 4 times is just digital zoom. So when looking at this photo, the iPhone 15 Pro looks better because it's able to use the optical sensor and it gives you a much better image. So if you're using both these phones and you're using them primarily between 3 to 4 times zoom, the 15 Pro is the one you want to get because those photos are going to look better. Of course, the story changes when we zoom in more, and let's go ahead and move this over to 5 times zoom. Here we're definitely seeing a better image on the 15 Pro Max. I mean, there's better color here, it's sharper. We're definitely starting to see some benefits to the 15 Pro Max. So here I am looking down the street and there's like a bell tower there in the distance. So this is shot just at one time so you can see how far this is away with the main camera. But then we're gonna go ahead and zoom in. This is now 15 times zoom on both phones. So this is digital zoom on both of them. But the 15 Pro Max has a big advantage because we have that leap of the 5 times optical versus 3 times. So we're already getting a better image here. There's also more light coming in just because it's a larger sensor overall. This was in the shadows. Between these two, the 15 Pro Max is definitely a better image. And then when I go further and take it to 25, again, you can't even do this on a 15 Pro. You have to like shoot the photo, then crop it further. Hit or miss on whether it's like you want to call this a good usable image, but you can't do it on the 15 Pro. Here's another example, this like street sign clock thing going on. We're doing 15 times zoom first, comparing the two, and then looking at it with the 25 zoom on the 15 Pro Max. I think this one's crazy because we're getting better details here at 25 digital zoom on the 15 Pro Max compared to the 15 times digital zoom on the iPhone 15 Pro. Okay, last one showing off these telephoto differences. This again, 15 times digital zoom on both phones looks markedly better on the 15 Pro Max. And when I zoom it in more to 25 times, this is a absolutely usable photo. This is in the shade at maxed out zoom. I am so impressed with this. This looks so much better than the 15 Pro. It's just hands down a much better camera. So that's going to be the difference though. When you're doing more zoom, 15 Pro Max, absolutely. But you're in that middle zone, 3 to 4 times. The 15 Pro is going to be the one to get. So those are the differences between the iPhone 15 Pro and the iPhone 15 Pro Max. What do you think? Do you think the 15 Pro Max is worth it this year? Let me know down below in the comments or on Twitter at Andrew_OSU or on Threads at Andrew O'Hara 941. Otherwise, stay tuned. Got a lot more videos comparing Apple's latest flagship devices coming your way.